Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Digital Glenn, how are you?
Digital. I'm in person, man. What do you mean digital?
Well, because you're like affixed to that phone, you know, and aren't we all? It's crazy. I mean, when I think about it's funny, we did that, 8 years ago episode last week,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, 8 years ago, the phone was so immature. Now it's so mature. We get so much. It writes emails for me with AI.
God, that sounds so sexy. Well,
I know,
do you
right?
really use that much AI?
No, I play around with it, but
I've just started to dabble in it.
What,
right?
Once my job gets replaced by AI, I'll have a lot more time
Nobody
to
will
study
replace
AI.
you ever with AI.
Right,
you know?
right.
But, a couple things. First of all,
Yes.
I love my iPhone.
Yeah.
I used to think, like the way I would connect.
iPhone is not a corporate sponsor of Sober
No, they
Coffee.
aren't. But I love Apple products. I have all of them. But one of the things, like years ago, early in sobriety, I would use that as kind of a stopping point throughout my day to connect with my higher power, right? Or just remind myself about
I
sobriety.
use an iPhone to do that.
Every time I plugged my iPhone in to recharge it,
Oh.
I would just take a pause, right? Because I thought, hey, this $1 billion device needs to
Recharge.
be recharged. So do I,
Oh,
right?
Interesting analogy.
But now that my new iPhone 14 Pro Max Superstar, whatever, it goes like 20 hours on the same battery. So now I plug in less and I figure out other things. But my iPhone does like 1,000 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I use it for 3.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that's something to think about. And then, no, I am digital. In fact, I saw a report. I get a weekly stats report from my iPhone, and was congratulating because my screen time was down last week
Oh, really? Okay.
to 17 hours a day. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? I cannot be on that thing for 17 hours a day.
I'm with you for a couple of those 17, and
It's
and
still going on.
It's still going
I'm
on.
sorry
Hey,
for being rude. I
little
should
bit-
be more present. I
Yes.
apologize.
A little behind the counter.
Yeah.
We do have the YouTube channel thing going right now. People should, if they need to, can point people to YouTube to get episodes as well.
There's no video, just audio
No, just
on
audio,
video
just audio.
tube.
Right, exactly. With a cool
Right.
graphic that Brian did for us here at Audio Hive, and also just to remind people that associated with the podcast are blogs that we write. And there's some content there that they might want to check out. Sometimes it's on topic. Sometimes it's just a quick sentence that happened during the course of the coffee that we unpack in a paragraph.
So not to project, and not that I've been thinking about this because the idea just came to my head, but how cool would it be, man, to at some point to compile all those writings because they're in our resource room. Well, no, they're on our website, under writings.
Under writings, right?
I mean, they are some of the best things I've read. In fact, they are so good. I asked you if GPT was right. if they're written by artificial intelligence because they're so. They're
written by disabled or disabled intelligence mind.
Man, I'll tell you,
Right.
they're just very.
No,
just great
it's
stuff.
fun. It's cathartic. It's good stuff. And
All right, so what are we doing, man? We're just bantering. I mean,
we're
we
bantering.
can banter
Yeah,
for an
hey,
hour if you want.
Guess what? I see someone just walked into the coffee shop.
I know he's a rock star. He's my, I don't have favorites, but if I had favorites, he'd be my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we got Dr. John again. If you
Dr. John.
Just quick behind the counter. If you haven't had a chance, go back and listen. John's joined us for coffee before. Super glad he's back. John, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you had to GPS your way back up here because you split time in between two of our wonderful states in the United States of America. So you join us when the weather's nice, and then I see none of Dr. John.
Totally.
Once the snow flurries start coming, it's like, where is he? I don't know. He's gone. I guess he's gone.
Once the leaves turn.
Yeah.
This is still home, though.
Yes.
Yeah, this is still home.
Yeah. Good for you.
Great to
we're
see you,
glad.
Doc.
And you were part of my home journey. So just so grateful to have you. We were talking a little bit before we went live here, and when I came in, and really we wrapped up our last episode with this statement. I mean, I came in, I wanted something. I wanted AA to be something I wanted my recovery to be something for me that was really, my expectations weren't in line with reality, right? I wanted a softer, easier way, and I found out that my old way was the softer, easier way that kept leading me down a path of destruction. I came in and I needed honesty, and I can tell you right now that I'm sitting at a coffee shop right now with two people that gave me honesty and said, Mike, don't expect rainbows, unicorns, and puppies every day. That's not what you're getting, And so, John, I appreciate you so much because you shot straight with me, and it comes from your years of experience. This is, you're not, this is not your first rodeo, as they say. Right. So great to have you back.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So, when we talked a little bit about getting together for coffee, I thought it was the right direction to go, because we first started talking about topics, right? Because but then you've got 30 minutes, you've got a box, you try and package it, present it, get a point together, and produce it.
It
and
is
put
very
it out
hard
there.
to get Dr. John in a box.
Right. You can only
It doesn't work.
You can only
It
get
doesn't
Jack
work.
in the box.
Yeah.
That's all you
Because
can
I'm
get.
so long-winded, right?
Right. So, without me being too long-winded, I thought that it would be a good idea. Just, you've had years of experience of sobriety, and had a relapse in the middle of all this bliss, and so I thought it'd be good to just kind of talk about the real pivotal or seminal or major moments in your life that have kind of defined where you got to now. A lot of things happen in our lives that are quick to the moment, but they leave us with a lifelong impact or a directional change.
Right.
So do you think you can kind of unpack some of those moments for us?
Yeah. If I ramble too much, just set me back on course. But I was thinking on the way here, what are we going to talk about? And of course, it's your show. You take the lead. But what was going through my head is I'm getting on in years now, and as my good friend Donna says, we're all on the exit ramp. I try not to.
I like that.
I try not to be too morbidly preoccupied with that, but those of us who've been around for a while, and I came into AA in 1980, and although, as you already pointed out, I took a little research sabbatical after 15 years. You guys called it a relapse. I called it a research sabbatical. But I have the advantage now of looking back, hindsight. Hindsight is insight, and I can reflect back. And I recognize now that certain things that happened along the way that at the time I didn't recognize as a seminal moment were in fact extremely impactful. A couple of them I touched on last time I was here, and I made the mistake of listening to my podcast yesterday, and I thought, oh crap, I got nothing new to say.
Plus, I sound like Pee Wee Herman when I listen to my own voice. It's like, who is that squeaky guy?
Oh, I hate the sound of my voice.
Oh, it's terrible.
To me, my voice sounds like da da da.
Oh, see, you get that. I'm Pee Wee Herman. I'm on total end of the spectrum.
So early on, one of the most impactful moments, and I talk about this frequently at meetings, and I know you guys have both heard it a number of times, is I was about a year and a half into the program. I was bone dry. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I was miserable. My honeymoon was fairly brief because outwardly my life was still pretty much intact. I saw the writing on the wall, but, I still had my career, and my wife was standing by me, and I had the 2 luxury cars in the driveway, et cetera, et cetera. But bottom is an inside job, and I apparently had enough pain to come in. But not the only thing, but the major thing that changed when I quit drinking is that my soul food, the thing that gave me relief from my ism, from myself, was alcohol, was out of the picture, So after a brief honeymoon, I was pretty freaking miserable. Of course, I went to 1 meeting a week. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't working the steps. And one night, I remember like it was yesterday, Friday night, this is back in 1980, I'm walking out of the meeting, and an old-timer, looked a little bit like you, in fact. Now I'm 33, and he was probably our age. And he calls me aside, and he says, "Hey, kid, come here." And I said, "Oh." I said, "What?" He says, "You're not coming back, are you?" And I thought, well, this guy is psychic.
He's psychic.
Because I pretty much decided that. And I says, "No, I don't think I am." He said, "Why?" I said, "This isn't working for me." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm just not feeling all this joy and gratitude and spirituality and love." And he says, "So?" I said, well, so it's not working for me. He says, well, where'd you get the idea this is a feel-good program?
Right.
You want to feel good? Go get drunk. Go get high. You know how to make yourself feel good. You want to get well? Stick around. Now, not only did that save my butt at that time, that was very powerful. I said, oh, my God. Because like you guys were talking earlier, I thought it was going to be, I stopped drinking, everything would be wonderful.
Sure.
You know, I'll become a good boy and everything will be wonderful. And that has sustained me numerous times throughout my recovery up until the present moment. Because I don't know about you guys, but my journey has not been one of feeling gooder and gooder and gooder and gooder. It's been more like up and down on an emotional level, up and down.
Right.
You know, there are times when I'm filled with doubt. And there's times I ask myself, what do I go to these darn meetings for? I'm going to hear the same crap over and over. There's times I just don't feel it, you know. And I remember what Charlie Healy said. And as a matter of fact, again, in hindsight, I have found that if I continue to do the simple basics during those dark times, when I'm not feeling it, when I just plod along, trudge along, you know, pick up the phone when the sponsee calls, even though I feel like I have nothing to give, go to the meeting, even though when I just follow through, I've learned in hindsight that not only do I survive those dark periods, but those seem to be the periods of real growth. You know, that's when I develop my spiritual testicles, if you will. You know, that's when all this not Mickey Mouse, but this stuff goes from my head into my
into your heart,
into my soul.
Right.
So that was a very powerful
That's a great line. So you're not going to feel good. You're not here to feel good. You're here to get well. Is what he said.
Yeah. And, you know, a corollary of that is, and what I tell newcomers is never assess your own progress in the program. Okay, very quickly. As you know, I worked in the field for many years. And after somebody be discharged from our 28-day program, I'd see him in the office for a follow-up. And sessions almost invariably went one of two ways. I'd say, Mike, how's it going? You know, how are you doing? How are you doing in your recovery? I'm doing great. You know, well, really, tell me. Oh, I feel great. The wife and I are getting along. I'm working out. I'm, you know, working overtime. Blah 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 blah. But that's good. Are you going to your meetings? Well, I don't really have time for those. Are you calling your sponsor? Well, he's kind of an idiot. You know. Are you saying your prayers? Well, I'm a deep thinking agnostic. I said, Mike, I'm glad you're feeling good, and I'm glad things are going well. But I don't think you're doing well. Or conversely, Glenn, how are you doing? Terrible. What's going on? Oh, I'm depressed. I'm anxious. The wife and I are still arguing. My sponsor's an idiot. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, are you going to those meetings, as you were told? Yes. Are you calling your sponsor? It's a waste of time, but yeah, I call them regularly. Are you saying your prayers? Even though I don't feel it, I say, you're doing all right. So feeling good and doing well are two different things. You know, feeling bad doesn't mean you're doing bad necessarily. Feeling good doesn't necessarily mean you're doing well. And I think it's so critical because, as we'll discuss before, we'll probably bring it up again, the vast majority of people who walk through the doors of AA don't stick around. You know,
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So one of the things, and you probably set the stage years ago for me for this, but what I've learned and I focus on is doing the next right thing, irregardless or regardless. I'm not sure what the right word is. It doesn't matter how I feel.
Right.
I just do it. If I waited for good feelings to do, I wouldn't accomplish anything. I'd be back drinking because, like you say, if you want to feel good, go buy some vodka.
Right.
You know?
If I do what feels good, it'll eventually feel bad. If I do what's right, it'll eventually feel good.
Key word there
Eventually.
is eventually.
Yeah.
That's like sometimes slowly, right?
Yeah.
I'm mostly slowly.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of, I was about 5 years sober, roughly. And more I was thinking, what do they mean when they say work the program? Now I understand, don't drink, go to meetings, say your prayers. I got that. But on a day-to-day basis, when dealing with difficult situations, interpersonal conflicts, whatever it may be, how do you then work the program? And I was doing it to my patients and my sponsees. Are you working your program? You must not be working your program. And every time I felt bad, I thought, maybe I'm not working my program. So I checked with some old-timers. And I'd say, Frank, what do you mean when you say work the program? I get answers like, well, just work the effing program. Well, could you elaborate? Well, just work the steps. And how do with the slide rule, with the wrench, with the screw, it didn't help, okay? And then with the help of a good sponsor, what I came to is working the program, and this sounds a little boring but a little dry. Working the program, I think, means to act rightly in spite of my thoughts and feelings, okay? I'm still an alcoholic. I still tick like an alcoholic. There's still times when I'm tormented with doubt, obsessive worry. I'm still a glass or a cup half empty type guy. Mm-hmm. And I think working the program means to act rightly in spite of my thoughts and feelings. But to do that, I need your input. Mm-hmm. Okay? As Glenn just mentioned, I can't read my own label. Right. I will always have a blind spot.
You know what I love? You know what I love about this? The whole work the program thing. I remember the memory came flooding back to me. I remember walking in to meetings early on, and they'd go around the room. Yeah, I'm feeling great, man. This program has worked great for me. And before I knew it, 60 minutes, it was just people saying the program worked great for them, and we were our father and then out of there. And I'm like, can somebody tell me about the program? What is the program? Yeah. And yeah.
So I have to tell you a funny story. So I was in a big key business meeting this week, and we have an external investor and a strategic advisor, right? And we're doing some brainstorming. And I said, hey, guys, I really value you. I said, we're right in the middle of this launch. And, I said, I really value your input and perspective because it's very hard for us to read the label on our own jar.
Oh, you're using it outside.
No, I said it to him. He stopped me. He goes, I've never heard that. He goes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have some more.
I'll give you one too. And in my last 20 years of my career, I worked at the Elgin Mental Health Center forensic program, and every month you'd have to staff every patient, and these were very complicated, very sick people, and you'd have $100,000 worth of expertise. There were psychologists and social workers, psychiatrists, and all kinds of specialists. And they would get into neurochemistry and psychobabble and Freud and this and that. And many a time I'd sit there and I'd listen, and something I heard at a meeting that morning would come out, like maybe the guy just has to learn to suffer a little better, or people can't read their own label, and
right.
They'd stop it. Oh, Dr. Meisner, where did you get that? At a meeting this morning from a guy with 2 months sobriety.
2 months sobriety and a
plumber. They're all waiting for some Harvard
and
convention,
a degree in
right?
Plumber, he's a certified plumber.
There's so much wisdom in this program.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try to do on this podcast, Dr. John, is there's so many words, right, thrown out there, and there's so many things, just like work the program, right? And what we have committed to doing is kind of breaking that down and saying, okay, what does that really mean? Right. Like, what does work the program mean? Right. Examples. And I was just talking with Mikey out in the parking lot. Personal thing I'm going through with a family member. And I'm like, okay, what does work the program mean? One is being aware of it, right? Being aware of the situation, being aware that I'm building the resentment, being aware that, hey, I'm kind of not feeling cool, right? Now, what do I do with it? Mm-hmm. Call my sponsor, right? And I share it with him, and he's like, God, Glenn, you're an idiot, right? or I pray, right? And I say, you know what? Hey, man, let me get out of my ego. I don't need to control this. And in the end, and we've talked about this many times, when I have problems with other people, most of the time it's with me. Sometimes they're just jag-offs.
Page 90 of the 12 and 12. It's a spiritual axiom.
Yeah, it's
Anytime
me.
Anytime I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah. And so for me to expect somebody to change, key lesson I've learned, for me to expect somebody else to change, that's a losing proposition. But what I can change is me and how I look at something. And what, by working the program and all these steps, I was chatting with Mikey about it, right? So I'm connecting with community, and now I'm talking here about it. What I realized is it's Glenn's ego, Glenn's control, Glenn's way is starting to creep into things. And so now being aware of that, I can help dissect that. But it's really cool to break things down just like you did, because we use all these words like peace. What does that mean?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Self cannot transform self. Ego cannot conquer ego, And I think the real meaning, to me, the we always talk about it's a we program. Well, not just in the social sense. We hang out and we call each other, we support each other. But for me, at least, God works through people. I need you to read my label. I think we alcoholics are people of emotional extremes. I certainly am. When I feel things, I feel them strongly. When I'm angry, I'm real angry. I'm sort of a 10 or 1 guy, and I think most of us are. And I think working the program is to act rightly. To do that, I need your input for this reason. When my emotions are disturbed, no matter what the cause, whether it's situational or I'm just in one of my ism funks, Disturbed emotions affect judgment. Okay, I don't trust myself enough to just go right up to God and wait for that still small voice, because that's probably me, convincing myself my will is God's will. And what I need to do is, when the emotions are disturbed, number one, freeze. I was taught it's the law of 3 F's. Don't fight, don't flee, freeze, meaning don't act on the feeling, don't pretend it isn't there. Just endure it. Feelings can be uncomfortable, but they're not dangerous. Then when you get the chance, talk to your sponsor. Not your bartender, your sponsor. In so doing, 3 things happen. 1, there's some relief, because a pain shared is a pain halved. More importantly, it gives the sponsor a chance to take your inventory. Okay, and point out, John, it's not him, it's not the other guy. Maybe it's your expectations, maybe it's your pride, whatever. Most importantly, it gives them a chance to give you some good, orderly direction, G-O-D, which frequently is contrary to what I want to hear. Because what I want and what I need are 2 different things. Then I pray for the willingness to take that direction.
So that's number 3. So freeze, call your sponsor and pray on it.
And then pray for the willingness. And it's all summarized in my favorite Karate Kid story, which we can get to later.
Over time, I used to call my sponsor on things, and the biggest responses I got, I can always put buttons on them. One is, Glenn, it's none of your business. Amazing how many times I heard that. 2 is serenity prayer. You can't do anything about that situation, right? And thirdly is, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, right.
I could call my
trash out.
I did. I called him one time. I said, man, I took the trash out on time. And he just said, Glenn, it's what we're supposed to do. Yeah. No, it was trash, and I registered my car on time for the first time in like 12 years. Because I wasn't drunk, and I was able to do it, and I lived up to my responsibilities. He said, and I was always looking for a pat on the back.
My mentor, Cecilia, who I talk about, she was my mentor, sponsor, spiritual guide for about 10 years, doing a very informative recovery. And whenever I would take conflicts to her, which was often, she would say things like, he, she, they are the wrong pronouns, John. Quit whining. Talk about yourself. Oh, you don't understand. She said this, he did that. She would also say frequently, John, they can't hurt you. Okay? Because I'm a real fear-based guy, and everything goes down to fear. It comes out as anger and all kinds of complicated negative emotions. But time and time again, when I'd be all twisted in a knot over whatever the situation, they can't hurt you. Yeah, but they can. They can't. They can't. They can't really hurt you. And her last thing she told me is, whenever I came to her, says, I've been praying on this, and I'm 99.9% sure that God's will is such and such. 9 times out of 10, no, John.
No, John.
That's not God. When you think you've got God's will figured out, come and check with me first.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome.
I love that. So she became a bit your sponsor, and this sounds to me like one of those other seminal moments, meeting her and having her introduced into your life. She had, what put her in the, because it blows me away like that you keep coming to meetings and are sharing your journey with guys like me who so desperately needed to hear it, right? Mm-hmm. And I always thought to myself at the time, why would a guy keep coming back here when he's got 5-8 years sobriety? What? Go live life, man. You're free, right? And here I am going to meetings at 5 years sober, and you continue to go to meetings to help the next guy, and she came to meetings just to help you.
Well, just real quick, my first sponsor name was Ray. He sponsored me for 5 years. And after 5 years, he fired me out of the clear blue without explanation. Cecilia was his sponsor. And I know women shouldn't sponsor men, but I understand that. But Cecilia was older than Yoda and as wise as Yoda. And so I called Cecilia. I said, Ray fired me, this and that. What do I do? She said, let me pray on it. I'll get back to you. A week later, she calls me up and she says, John, I think the only person that can sponsor you is me. And I thought, damn, I must be special. Because Cecilia was highly regarded at the Mustard Seed. She'd been around AA for many, many years. And sometime later I said, I'm just curious, why did you say you're the only one that can sponsor me? She said, you're the most arrogant asshole I have ever met. Nice. I can't imagine anybody dealing with you. I said, oh, I thought I was special.
So let me complete my mental picture, because you said she was as old as Yoda, which got a laugh out of our engineer. But did she look like Yoda?
She actually looked like my good friend Stella a little bit. She was a
Okay,
tall, thin
right.
woman, and she was probably my age, what I am now. She was an amazing woman. A lot of tough love. She was my Mrs. Miyagi.
Okay.
And I allowed her to be. I think by then, in hindsight.
So that's a point of surrender, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's saying, hey, I'm going to allow you to provide direction to me.
Yeah. Yeah, a sponsor can only be as effective as the sponsee allows them to be. You know?
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. And arrogance, you mentioned arrogance, and it's good to have people put you in your place. I was an arrogant asshole when I was out there drinking. Everything was grandiose. It was all about me. I was my way or the highway. I mean, come on, people.
But you know, I didn't mean to be.
I didn't
The strange
either.
thing, when she said that, it was hurtful because inside I was actually feeling very afraid, very vulnerable, and didn't realize that the more broken I feel on the inside, the more potent I tend to come across on the outside.
Super interesting.
It's compensatory. It's not a manipulation. You know, never did I think. I'm always troubled when they say selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. And I know we should never question the big book, but what I don't like about that, it's pejorative. You know, it's pejorative. Okay, I was not a sociopathic jerk. I was never a mean-spirited person. You know, I was scared. And the way, and it doesn't excuse bad behavior. But in hindsight, I can see that the way I coped with my hole in the soul or my ism is by being competent and potent and isolating. And you know, so the arrogant. You know what I'm saying? To me, there's a difference between being an asshole and acting like one.
Right,
Did I act
right.
like one? Yeah. Did I tell my share of lies? Yeah. But it took a toll on me. You know, it's precisely because I'm not a bad guy that the bad behavior took such a toll, which is what my bottom was. My bottom was not external. My bottom was I just could not live with myself anymore because while drinking and drugging, I did things that violated my own value system, you know, and the internal conflict. So I cringe a little bit with, you know, get honest with yourself. And you already mentioned it. You know, lying is a deliberate act. Okay? And I have never deliberately lied to myself. I have never said, hey, John, 2 + 2 is 5. Okay? Denial is the inability to see. There's a difference. Okay? Did I speak untruths? Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
When I was actively addicted, sure, I lied to cover my tracks. I had to lie. I'm not going to, you know, had to get away with it. But I don't like to lie, and I don't lie well. And once I got sober, there was not much reason to lie. I cleaned up my act.
Right.
You know, why would I come to A and lie?
Right.
Why would I waste your time and my time? But even when I tell you the truth as I know it, I still may be off base. When I work with new guys, I tell them, I'm going to assume you're telling me the truth. I'm not a good detective.
Right.
You know, if you tell me you didn't drink and you drink, I don't know. I'm not going to come smell your breath. But even when you tell me the truth as you know it, you know, you're still going to be off base. See what I'm saying? The inability to see and lying are two different things. You can only be as honest as you are well. My truth today is different than it was 5 years ago.
Right.
That doesn't mean I was lying 5 years ago.
It was just
I've just become more aware.
sure.
All right, so let me throw out a situation. Speaking of lying, let me throw out a situation off the cuff here. I want your input. So there's a guy in the program. I'm going to speak broadly. Guy in the program lies about his sobriety date. I know it. He knows it. I mean, I don't. What should I do? What, if anything?
Should you confront him? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Should I confront him?
I don't know.
And I know him very well.
I'm in the room.
It's not you, brother.
Okay.
I don't have a clear answer for that. You know,
See, I don't either. That's why.
Sponsorship working with others is more art than it is science.
Right.
You know, I don't know this guy. I don't know if he's deliberately lying and you know he's lying. I would certainly remind him that if he lies, he's responsible. You know, you can't make him be honest. If he wants to lie, he's going to lie. He's going to pay the price. I would remind him of those principles, not necessarily confront him with this specific lie, because then he's going to get defensive, dig himself in. You know, it may rupture the relationship. You know, we act like sociopaths, but we're not sociopaths. Assuming this guy's not a sociopath, he has a conscience. So if he's lying, it's going to take a toll on him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And it's so funny when I'm working with guys now. I had a guy yesterday. His life is just melting around him, and his knee jerk is to ask me for relationship advice and ask me for financial advice and I said, look, I have one job, and that's your sobriety. That's my only role in your life. So, I mean, let's talk about the things that might cause you to drink. And one of the things, anything within you that might cause you to drink, like honesty or you're managing your expectations or accepting situations as they are. Those are the things I'm going to focus on with you, because I'm not a financial counselor. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not a real estate advisor.
Yeah. So my first reaction is I call my sponsor a lot less these days because I already know his answer. I mean, I call him.
That's what you're supposed to do, Glenn.
1,000 times, and I
that's
just
his answer.
And so I'm projecting and saying, well, his answer would be, Glenn, it's none of your business. But I am actually working with the guy, right? And but it was just the only thing that I could come to mind is its ego, right? It's you want to portray, hey, I have longer sobriety than I really do, right? That's the only thing that came to mind.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I've lied about my sobriety dates, I mean, there's times I told people I had 6 months when I had 6 days,
Yeah.
but that was years ago until I, started living differently.
See, I'd be confused. I'd probably lie if I had more than one. I mean, I had the one date that my date of, my come to realization moment.
Yeah, but I lied back then because of the ego.
Right. Well, right.
I didn't want people to know I failed again. I was afraid of people giving up on me.
I've been tempted to, and I certainly tell my fibs. I don't want to get moralistic, but I have struggled with that because I came in 1980. So had I stuck, I'd have, 43 years. But as you guys both know, after 15 years, I went on this research sabbatical for 5 years. And I came back in 2000, so now I've got 23 years. Now, my rationalization for my ego is that, to me, inside, I feel a more meaningful date is 1980. I feel like I've been around because even that 5-year
hiatus
was very impactful. I survived it. I would never recommend relapse. Okay, I don't agree with people who say relapse is part of recovery. I don't think that's true. I think relapse is when you turn your back on recovery.
It's like a fire alarm.
I survived it, and again, in hindsight, that actually deepened my appreciation for the depth of my illness. Okay, I think that made me realize on a visceral level that my problem is not just drinking and behaving badly, but even when I put the plug in the jug, even when I clean up my act and work the steps, I still have alcoholism. I will never have alcoholism. Right. But with the sobriety dates, so I announce it, but I got 22 years, but it's a part of me. But I really have 43.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
People get your pens and papers out.
Here's where my brain goes. I mean, it's just crazy. So two situations. One is when you sat there and say how impactful that 5 years was for you. You know what my brain says? Glenn, you might need that. I mean, that's just where and then secondly, when guys in the room talk about doing coke and drinking, I literally, my brain says, my head
Maybe
trash.
I should have tried that.
It says, that's my answer. I struggled, because I got the shakes, and if I had done coke and drank, it would have been different for me. That was my solution.
May I suggest that you'd be dead had you tried the combination? You couldn't handle one. You were extreme on the one.
I know,
hey,
totally.
so I'm the time master because we've talked about a couple of pivotal lessons.
There's probably
or
like 40
breakthroughs.
bullet points.
Yeah, can we meet for coffee again next week?
Absolutely.
Can we do that? Let's do a hard stop. Let's come back for coffee next week. I got a whole page of notes. There was some great nuggets in there. Let's get back together one more week. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, sound good, Glenn?
Perfect, man.
All right, man.
Dr. John, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago.